Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond Profit, a global perspective. This is Mark. Hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about protectionism today. I always have people asking me questions about what's up with tariffs? What are subsidies? Let's talk about some of this stuff. Well, there's a series of videos that we're going to do in a little bit that will talk about some of these things in a little more depth. But what I want to do first is just establish some of the basic language, right? How do we talk about these forms of protectionist trade and what is it? Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody to please like and subscribe to this channel. If this is stuff that's helpful to you, that helps you understand things, please support us. We really appreciate that. So, before we get into our discussion of protectionism, it's probably first worth understanding what free trade is. Free trade happens when two or more countries get together and they decide that they want to ease trade restrictions with each other. That is, maybe you want to eliminate or highly reduce tariffs. Maybe you want to make it so that you can access each other's markets a whole lot easier in one way or another. There's definite financial benefits to this because, as we've discussed in another video, the more trade you engage in, the fewer restrictions there are, the more money there is to be made by businesses and, by extension, by governments through taxes. Now we get to the reverse of free trade, and that is protectionism. What's protectionism? In this case, you have countries that are concerned about certain things inside their country that they want to protect, right? So that might be businesses, right? Maybe there's businesses that are considered to be strategic, important, or maybe just want preferential treatment because they've got friends who are in power. One way or another, there's going to be certain tools that governments may use in order to protect those businesses. By extension, they may also want to protect some workers. In democracies, workers that are not happy do not vote for politicians. And so trying to make sure that these workers are happy may be one part of it. Making sure that they get real pay, something that will allow them to have a sustainable life. When you engage in trade, sometimes jobs can go elsewhere. Jobs can go overseas. And when you have situations of low pay, high unemployment, that's not a very favorable political situation. And so sometimes governments will do certain things in order to try to protect the worker. Another thing they may do with protectionism is try to protect resources, right? There are key strategic resources that are important to a lot of countries. Things like coal, things like steel, right? Maybe we don't want to free trade these things. Maybe we want to hoard these things because we're going to be afraid of what happens if we sell it off and get rid of it, or if somebody else gets it, right? So there's all sorts of things like that where governments may put policies in place in order to prevent the free sale of those things. Now we get to the question of the tools of protectionism. There are several. I'm just going to talk about a few, and briefly. One of them is quotas. That is, that sometimes governments decide there's only certain amounts of products they will allow to be imported into their country. So let's say that they're afraid of some other country flooding their market with cheap products, let's say cheap agricultural products, for example. They may put certain rules in place that prevent certain countries from exporting their agricultural products, say, for example, to the United States, so that it gives a benefit to our farmers and doesn't benefit then that country that's trying desperately, obviously, to sell their stuff. And we're saying, I'm sorry, we're only going to allow so much, a quota of that, or sometimes maybe none at all. Another tool of protectionism are subsidies. Subsidies, in that case, what we're doing is we are taking select businesses or industries and giving them certain resources, particularly money, tax breaks, whatever it is, grants, in order to try to make sure that that business survives and maybe give them an edge over foreign competition. That'll be covered in a future video, but just wanted to basically throw that out as a definition for now. The last form of protectionism that I'm going to talk about here in this video anyway is tariffs. And tariffs is kind of a big deal. There's been a lot of talk about it in recent years. Simply, a tariff is a tax on imports. So the idea is that when a product comes into the United States, then we are going to put a tax on it so that it decreases the likelihood that people domestically may want to purchase it, right? Hypothetically, if you put a tax on something, that cost is going to be passed on to the consumer, and that makes that individual product cost more than, say, an American product that doesn't have the same tax on top of it. I'm going to explain a lot more about tariffs, what they do, how they work, and what their effects are in another video. But for now, let's just say that's another form of protectionism that governments use in order to try to achieve their ends. And when it comes to protectionism and sanctions, there's one more thing you ought to know. And that is that there's a difference between those people who want to advance policies for the purpose of gaining an economic advantage versus those who believe that they ought to do exactly the same policies for the purpose of national security. I've already explained the reasons why one might put tariffs on another country or on certain products in order to gain economic advantage and protect your own stuff, so to speak, right? However, you may want to do the same kinds of things to try to punish another country because they present a national security threat in one reason or another. So if you consider, for example, the Trump tariffs, they weren't really set in place for the purpose of national security as much as with an eye toward trade policy and maintaining a certain trade balance. The Biden administration, on the other hand, did have some of those same economic concerns. They eliminated tariffs against Mexico, or at least the ones from the Trump administration, and against Europe, but not against China, because they perceived China was a threat technologically and in certain other ways when it came to global competition. So again, it kind of depends on how you want to look at things. For example, we still have sanctions on Cuba, and that's been in place since the early 1960s. And that is a relic of our Cold War approach. And I do say relic because the Soviet Union isn't around anymore, and Cuba isn't as strategically important as we once believed that it was. However, these policies are still in place today. Why? Well, probably not for economic reasons or because of national security reasons, but because there are so many Cubans that have emigrated and have very, very strong feelings about the human rights issues that are occurring there, that they have a strong lobby and continue to pressure Congress in terms of keeping those sanctions in place. Most of the countries throughout the world have eliminated those policies, trade freely with Cuba, and enjoy a positive trade relationship and a lot of economic benefits from doing that. It would be very economically advantageous for us to eliminate those sanctions with Cuba and engage in free trade with them. However, because there are domestic constituencies that believe that that's not a good idea, we are not going to do the thing which is economically advantageous, that is going to make more money for our businesses, right? We are going to do those things that satisfy the constituents who may vote for Congress people. So protectionism includes a lot of tools that states use in order to protect things that are important to them, right? Maybe it's labor, maybe it is resources, maybe it is trying to protect the businesses that are inside the country for one reason or another, but there are a lot of ways that you can go about doing that. Once again, I want to thank you for watching. For Beyond Profit, a Global Perspective, I'm Mark Harvey. See you next time.